Big tech collusion. The lawsuit against the Biden administration continues, and the Missouri Attorney General is releasing all sorts of goodies that we're going to go through today. You see here 3 different tweet threads, almost resembling the Twitter files. Some people might call these the AG files. These are coming from attorneys general in various states, Missouri and Louisiana in particular. But here, the first one came from Andrew Bailey. And we're going to go through a 9-tweet thread, and he's going to reference a very interesting individual, this guy, Rob Flaherty. And he's going to come up in both parts 1 and 2. Then we're going to learn about this fella, Brian Scully, who was formerly at CISA in part 3. But before we can really make sense of what the threads entail, we have to learn more about the people behind the threads, the people sending the emails that the Biden administration was sending to collude with big tech to censor Americans all across the country. The first person we need to meet is Rob Flaherty. Rob Flaherty.
This is Rob Friedlander, Communications Director on Beto's campaign.
Is this guy?
I'm Rob Flaherty. I'm the Digital Director.
And I'm Ophira Haskell. I'm the Deputy Communications Director for States.
And we're not Jen O'Malley Dillon. She's in a meeting right now, and so we decided we're going for lunch. We're going to go get a salad, and you guys should come with us, and we're going to do the update ourselves. What's been going on?
This is when he was working for the Beto campaign.
Another super strong debate performance. Debate day is always a long day. Beto and a couple of us played some Frisbee beforehand.
Is Beto good at Frisbee?
He is fantastic at Frisbee.
He's the ultimate at Frisbee.
That's definitely going to cut. So,
Didn't Cory Booker give you guys
Beto.
He shared.
All right.
The Treasury Department.
This is his background.
I started as an Obama organizer in 2008. Before that, I was a prolific high school soccer player. At some point, I ended up working for Amy Klobuchar. I then took a job at the Treasury Department. I left managing our economy to lead communications for a scrappy upstart named Beto O'Rourke running against Ted Cruz in the Senate race. And then now I'm the communications director for his presidential race.
What about you, Flaherty?
And so he actually then is now working at the White House as the presidential communications digital director. If you go over to his Wikipedia, you'll see this is the guy, Rob Flaherty, deputy assistant to the president and the director of digital strategy at the White House. Also got a long history. Creative director at Priorities USA, digital director. We saw that clip of him back in 2019-ish when he was digital director for Beto for America. Also digital director for Biden up until 2020, became the digital director for the transition team, and then worked his way over as the director of digital strategy for the White House, starting in January 2021, present up until the current year. And so we're going to go through the first tweet, keeping in mind that's who is sending the emails. Let's learn more about what happened. The Attorney General files start with Attorney General Andrew Bailey, state of Missouri. He says, "When I took office, I swore I would protect the Constitution. Here's why. We now have hard evidence that President Biden and his administration colluded with social media companies to censor differing viewpoints and to silence misinformation, which they later deemed to be true." The lawsuit against the Biden administration has produced the following discovery. Attorney General Bailey posts this one. He says, "Here's a White House employee asking Twitter to silence Robert Kennedy Jr., a known critic of the White House COVID narrative." This email came out from the White House, whitehouse.who.eop.gov. Executive Office of the President. Email from Clark Humphrey on 1/23/2021, right after Biden takes office. "Hey folks, I wanted to flag below the tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP." From the White House, trying to take out Kennedy. Robert Kennedy Jr. If we can keep an eye out for tweets that fall in this same genre, that would be great. Thanks, Clark. That is the government trying to censor the free speech of a private citizen. Get moving on the process for having it removed from the internet. A direct email from the White House. Here, the Biden White House directs Facebook to shut down a conservative named Tomi Lahren, as well as Tucker Carlson. Here's this email. Confidential email. It says, from redacted at facebook.com, sent 4/14/2021, Biden's in charge. From Facebook to Rob Flaherty, the guy we just talked about. Guess where he's at? The executive office of the presidency. Also copying somebody else at the executive office of the presidency. Subject is regarding Tucker. First email came in from Robert Flaherty. That was on April 14, 2021. He's the director of Joe Biden's digital strategy. He sent this letter in to somebody at Facebook. He says, okay, hey, so-and-so. You know, since we've been on the phone, the top post about vaccines today is Tucker Carlson saying that they don't work. Yesterday was Tomi Lahren, spelled wrong, very rude, disrespectful, saying that she's not going to take one. This is exactly why I want to know what, quote, reduction actually looks like. If reduction means pumping our most vaccine hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it doesn't work, then I'm not sure it's reduction. Okay? This is how our government, this is outrageous. This is how our government is talking to private media companies. This is from Rob Flaherty, the director of digital strategy at the White House. He knows he's at the White House. He knows that he has unlimited power of the federal government and the president who doesn't even know where he is behind him. And here's how he jokes. You can fill in the gaps of this conversation. Evidently, he said, we've been on the phone, right? We've been talking all the time. I'm asking you, why are you not doing anything to reduce our vaccine misinformation on your platform called Facebook? Why are you not getting rid of it? They say, we are getting rid of it, sir. We're sorry. Please don't come after us and make Mark Zuckerberg come into Congress again. He's going to fire me if he has to do that. So we are reducing this. We're limiting the spread. We're adjusting the knobs of the algorithm. We're doing whatever. And he says, literally, he's mocking them in this email. It's so disdainful. He has no respect for them at all. Any of these big tech people, like this poor fellow at Facebook, just getting abused by this dude. It's embarrassing. He says, he writes, this is exactly why I want to know what reduction actually looks like. If reduction means pumping out the most vaccine hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it doesn't work, then I'm not sure it's reduction. Like, if that's your idea of a good steak, well, then I don't know what the hell kind of a person you are. Obviously, somebody who's never even had a steak before, you idiot. One of those types of comments. And they don't work for the White House. It's Facebook. There's supposed to be a hard line here between this two stuff. But Rob doesn't care. Somebody responded, thanks. I saw the same thing when we hung up. Running this down now, right? So Facebook's like, please don't murder us, federal government. Another example. Bailey releases this one. Here's an example of big tech towing the line for Biden. Another email from somebody. Now this one's at Google. It's not just Twitter. It's all of them. This one was Tuesday, July 20th, 2021, from this person to Rob Flaherty at the White House regarding YouTube. Oh, they're doing it to us on YouTube. Yeah, we had our whole channel demonetized. I wonder who sent that email. We've had many manual strikes. I wonder who sent those emails. 9 months of demonetized here. Because of what? This one says, thanks, Rob. We appreciate your interest in our announcement today. With regard to your question on the tweet, It is important to keep in mind that borderline content accounts for a fraction of 1% of what is watched on YouTube. So he sends a letter about something on YouTube. Rob now, right? Rob is just this little digital hall monitor. He's just sending emails all day. Can you please take this one down? It scares me. It hurts my feelings. We use machine learning, writes YouTube back, to reduce recommendations of this type of content, including harmful misinfo, which is why I ask you so badly to share this content, share the shorts, share the segments with friends and family, invite them to come over here, because we get suppressed and buried under all of the other content. And they tell us that. We announced in January 2019, we announced changes to our recommendation system to limit the spread of this type of content. They told us that anything that was basically newsworthy, they were going to push to the bottom, and they would let the authoritative sources bubble up to the top. It resulted in a 70% drop in watch time on non-subscribe recommended content in the US. Our goal is to have that drop below 0.5%. Right? It's just twisting the knobs. So just censor certain viewpoints. We were talking about J6. We were talking about COVID. We were talking about the election. We were talking about all sorts of stuff. I will keep you updated with any new policy or product improvements, and will continue to help people find authoritative health information on YouTube. YouTube sends a censor. The White House sends a censor request. They've got to respond. There's more collusion here. This image is posted, coming out from Discovery. We're proactively monitoring these stories. They give us some examples of stories that are being shared. And they're saying, remove these stories, in other words. They're sharing a list of problematic material. They also say that the truth no longer matters to the White House. This email came out from Rob Flaherty. Friday, April 9th. Flaherty writes this one in from the Executive Office of the Presidency at a .gov address, literally from the government. I'm writing from the government here. He says, thanks for this. Hoare should be trying to land a time for us to talk. Rob says, we'll say I'm really mostly interested in what effects the interventions and products you've tested had on increasing vaccine interest within hesitant communities, and which ones have shown promise. Will say, this is unbelievable. I will say, this is from the White House digital director, writing to Facebook. Facebook is the company. I'm mostly interested in what effects the interventions and products you've tested have had on increasing vaccine interest within hesitant communities. So all of you anti-vaxxers, you had the White House, right? The federal government putting pressure on Facebook to turn your hesitation and your hesitant community into vaccine interests. Okay, the White House and the government algorithmically plotting to create products to make you more interested in this thing. This guy says, I really couldn't care less about the products unless they're having measurable impact. Okay, so I don't care about the stuff that's not really moving the needle. And while the product Safari has been interesting, so condescending, right? You've been showing us this product and this product and this product. At the end of the day, I care mostly about what actions and changes you're making to ensure you're not making our country's vaccine hesitancy problem worse. This is a government bureaucrat talking to a Facebook employee like this. It makes my stomach churn. This is your government, right? Like we say, like this stuff happens in foreign countries where the government comes and tells you how to run your shop. The digital director out of the Executive Office of the Presidency is telling this Facebook employee, I want you to ensure you're not making our country's vaccine hesitancy problem worse. I definitely have what I believe to be a non-comprehensive list of products you're building, but I still don't have a good empirical answer on how effective you've been at reducing the spread of the vaccine. they're reducing the spread of the vaccine skeptical content and misinformation to vaccine fence setters in the now folded lockdown. If blank can speak on those things, great. Blank hasn't been able to, but I'm sure someone there can. It's not his company. He's the digital director at the White House. This guy doesn't work for him. This is Facebook. He says, in the electoral context, you've tested and deployed in the electoral, okay, now elections now. He's pissed about COVID, and so now he's going to bash this guy on elections. In the electoral context, you tested and deployed an algorithmic shift that promoted quality news and information about the election. This was reported in the New York Times and also readily apparent to anyone with cursory social listening tools. You only did this, however, after an election that you helped increase skepticism in and an insurrection, which was plotted in large part on your platform. And then you turned it back off. I want some assurances based in data that you are not doing the same thing again here. I don't even, this person is one of the most egregious emails that we have ever seen, even in the Twitter files. It's a direct government email from Rob Flaherty, who self-identifies as the digital director for the White House, from a government email being released from an attorney general where he is literally scolding a private company. You do what I ask you to do. Change the election algorithms. Change it and don't change it back. And I want some assurances based in data that you're not changing it back again. The election algorithm was changed. You changed it back, presumably after the election, and I want it back on. Why'd you turn it back off? And he's still at the White House, right? Rob Flaherty's still at the White House. Has Congress demanded anything, done anything about this? This was posted on January 6th. Here is evidence that the scheme started at the highest, and I mean the highest levels of the White House. Rob Flaherty, again, same guy, coming from a government email account over to a bunch of people at Google. Google 1, Google 2, Google 3, Google 4, Google 5, Google 6, Google 7. Copied more people from the government, the White House Executive Office of the Presidency. Following up on today's conversation, says Rob. Oh, thanks again for the conversation today, which took place on April 22nd, 2021 at 2 in, that was 12 a.m. Yeah, that's a late email. All, thanks again for the conversation today. We'll look out for the top trends that you've seen in terms of misinformation about the jab. He says, to recap, all right, as we move away from a supply problem and toward a demand problem, we remain concerned that YouTube is, quote, funneling people into hesitance and intensifying people's hesitancy. All right, we don't like how people are thinking and how they're acting and the things that they're doing. So we need you to change them and how they feel by adjusting the algorithms and stop funneling people into hesitance, funnel them into compliance. We certainly recognize that removing content that is unfavorable to the cause of increasing vaccine adoption is not realistic or even a good solution. But we want to be sure that we have a handle on vaccine hesitancy generally, and we're working towards making the problem better. This is a concern that is shared at the highest, he says, and I mean highest, okay, in parentheses. This dude is one of the most rotten people that we've seen in this entire email drop saga. He's talking about the president, okay? This is a concern that is shared at the highest, and I mean highest levels of the White House. So we'd like to continue a good faith dialogue about what is going on under the hood here. I'm the on hook for reporting out. We'd like to continue a good faith dialogue. And if you don't do what we want you to do, guess who's on notice about this? The president, highest level at the White House. And you can understand that if we don't get this worked out, like if you don't show me what's going on under the hood there, as he says in his email, open up your company, right? This is that communist Gestapo coming into your house and saying, why don't you show me this and show me that and give me this and give me that. That's mine. That's mine. That's mine. That's what he's doing. Hey, Google, open your hood. Tell me what you're doing to censor our enemies. And if you can't possibly do this, guess what? Our good faith dialogue, it may not turn into good faith anymore. These emails, says Andrew, confirm what we've known all along about the Biden administration. They've been colluding with social media companies to stifle opposing voices. I will continue to push back on this blatant attack on the First Amendment. From Andrew. Now, there are two more threads, right? That was only the first part. He is dropping these like they're Twitter files, and they're a lot of fun. So he's going to tell us more about Rob Flaherty in part 2. And then in part 3, short threads, we're going to talk about Brian Scully, who is the former agent over at CISA. And we'll listen to an interview between him and a student or somebody over at Harvard. But before we talk about any of that, let's remember that we need our survival food and our survival gear from our friends over at 4patriots.com. As you know, a food shortage could be coming. Even here in the United States, we've got drought, inflation, new policies. Our food supply is near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4Patriots survival food kits ever. This is not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack easily, they've got different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and get 10% off anything in your first purchase on the store, including their 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on anything over $97. They're called 4Patriots because a portion of every sale goes to charities that support our veterans and their families. And you can go to 4patriots.com, get your chef hat, start building your stockpile today. Don't forget to use code Robert at checkout and get your survival gear. All right, my friends, now it's time to turn our attention to part 2, carrying on with Rob Flaherty and some of the most egregious censorship in our country that we have seen. Attorney General Bailey continues, he says, our office now has even more hard evidence that President Biden and his administration has been working with social media to suppress speech. Rob Flaherty sent this one out, May 6, 2021. Rob Flaherty, again from the government, sends this email to Facebook. He says, Dear Facebook, so I guess I have 2 questions for you here. 1, this person references 3 widest reach posts. I believe this is one. He says, for one, this one is still up. It's gotten 365,000 shares with 4 comments. We've talked about this in a different context, but how does something like that happen? The top post, the one from Wisconsin, has 2.1 million comments. Am I looking at one instance of sharing too? What is your assessment of what's going on here? It says, it won't come as a shock to you that we're particularly interested in your demotion efforts, which I don't think we have a good handle on. And based on the below, it doesn't seem like you do either. Not to sound like a broken record, but how much content is being demoted? And how effective are you at mitigating reach, and how quickly? As I've said, I don't think our position is that you should remove vaccine hesitant stuff. However, slowing it down seems reasonable. I just can't describe what it means or how you know it's working. Also, health groups. He says, sure. But it seems more likely that anti-vax stuff is moving in groups that are not about health, but are more, mom-centric and other spaces. Strikes me as the issue here is less from single-use anti-vaccine accounts and more about people, who do other things who are also vaccine hesitant. Yeah, like the mom groups, talking about soccer class or whatever, soccer practice. And then they also talk about the jabs. Can we go after them too? Seems like your, quote, dedicated vaccine hesitancy policy isn't stopping the disinfo dozen, and they're being deemed as not dedicated. So it feels like the problem likely carries over to groups. As a last thing, he says, she's this guy. I'd be interested in seeing this 100 ranking in terms of reach from the things you aren't actively promoting in the info panel. He wants to get in there and manipulate their algorithm because he's unhappy about this. Tucker Carlson email and the video that we talked about in the first thread. Flaherty disagrees with Facebook because they didn't remove Tucker. April 14th email comes out. Rob Flaherty writes the following. Comes from the government website, government email. Rob says, after Facebook refused to remove the Tucker Carlson video, Rob Flaherty said, okay, Facebook, I guess this is a good example of your rules in practice then, and a chance to dive in on questions as they're applied. How was this not violative? The second half of the segment is raising conspiracy theories about the government hiding information, and it's not just about one manufacturer. What exactly is the rule for removal versus demoting? He's demanding. Flaherty also says, moreover, you say reduced versus demoted. What does that even mean? There's 40,000 shares on that video. Who is seeing it right now? How many? How effective is it? And we've gone a million rounds on this in other contexts, so pardon what may seem like deja vu to me. But on what basis is, quote, visit the COVID-19 Information Center for Vaccine Resources the best thing to tag a video that says the vax doesn't work? Not for nothing, but last time we did this dance, he says, it ended in an insurrection. Sent from my iPhone. Rob Flaherty. Very, very dramatic, in addition to being demanding. He doesn't run Facebook. He doesn't run Google. He doesn't run Twitter. They're not his companies. Americans have free speech in this country. We also have the ability to engage without the government officially demanding us to silence ourselves. Did he forget about that rule? It looks like he did. Flaherty tells Twitter in another email that if your product is appending misinformation to our tweets, that seems like a fundamental issue. These emails came back out on Thursday, August 11th. Emails fly back and forth. Here, I'm happy to send you an economist who can explain the basics to your guys. Twitter responds, hey, Rob, thanks for reaching out. I believe you're referring to our Birdwatch product feature, which I think now is Community Notes. Here's the latest information about how it works. We'd be happy to arrange a meeting to walk you through how it works. We're collecting feedback. Says, okay, well, happy to talk through it, but if your product is appending misinformation to our tweets, that seems like a pretty fundamental issue. All right, so they must have got hit with a Community Watch, a Birdwatch thing. Rob Flaherty's like, I posted this about something, and then they, boom, you're a liar. Boom, Community Notes, or, somebody at the White House is posting something. And then they get that misinformation. He says, you're appending misinformation to our tweets. It must have been a White House tweet, right? The White House posted something, and then there was a Birdwatch, Community Notes. Actually, Joe's a liar. So he sends him an email. Why did you do that to our account? Well, here's how it works. This is Birdwatch. It's the community, idiots, not us. Well, your product is misrepresenting our narrative. They don't like that. Facebook offers some assurances. This email comes from Facebook back over to Rob. Rob sent an email previously. He's demanding everything he's demanding, very demanding individual. And so Facebook responds back to Andy, copying Rob Flaherty. Andy is also at the executive office of the president at a .gov address. So Facebook responds to Andy, copies Rob Flaherty. They say, Andy, thanks for taking the time to talk to us again on Friday. These guys are in meetings. They're talking all the time. It's ridiculous. What are they talking about? Per our discussion, I wanted to follow up with the next steps. All right, as discussed, we will make blank, who has been coordinating with the product, to work with you on a regular basis, okay? You're now going to have a full-time liaison. We're also going to share additional data. We've got new internal analytics that we're developing that's going to help us understand COVID-related content. So Facebook is now going to basically create this dashboard essentially and just share all of that with the White House. This is a top priority for us, and we'll keep you updated on our progress. You also asked us about levers for reducing virality of vaccine hesitancy content. You want us to shut that up. In addition to the policies that we have already discussed and additional changes, more is going to be coming. We're removing misinfo. We focus on reducing the virality. Experts have advised us it's important for people to be able to discuss their personal experiences and concerns. We're going to remove group pages, accounts when they're disproportionately promoting this content. Okay, so even if you're, in one of those mom groups that he was talking about previously, if you're a little bit too much, anti-vax versus soccer practice talk, illegal. More on this as we proceed. Finally, mentioned in the policies, WhatsApp approach, misinformation, limits the variety of messages, and he's talking about WhatsApp. All right, so the White House sends over a letter to Facebook. We need you guys to censor a lot more, or else good faith conversations go out the window. The highest level of the White House is interested in this. Things are going to become problematic. Facebook responds, no need to go there. We'll comply. We have a multi-billion-dollar company we don't want you to divest us from. Facebook assures Flaherty that they're also going to remove claims of public health tells us have been debunked. So another email also from Google or from Facebook, right? So they're laying out their whole policy. Sure, whatever you need. Here's our whole manual. We're not going to read through all of it. Flaherty accuses Twitter of Calvin Ball. Okay, now Calvin Ball is from a very excellent comic. It sort of offends me that this guy knows what it is because it's a great comic. And the fact that he's read it diminishes its excellence. But Rob Flaherty is talking about Calvin Ball. Calvin Ball comes from Calvin and Hobbes. And there's a game in the comic where Calvin just makes up the rules as they go along, right? He's this young guy with this tiger and they're just playing stuff and like weird rules happen, weird things happen. However you want it to go, it goes. Calvin always wins. It's always a fun game. So here, Rob Flaherty is bringing it up. He says, hi, Rob, I'm around if you'd like to dial. This is coming over from Twitter. The first email went out December 17, 2021. Flaherty writes over to Twitter. He says, new to the thread here, but this all reads to me like you're bending over backwards to say this isn't causing confusion on public issues. If the AP deems it confusing enough to write a fact check about it and you deem it confusing enough to create an event for it, how on earth is it not confusing enough for it at least to have a label? Very upset about a doctored video of the First Lady. Remember, they were very upset about Joe Biden's tongue video as well. He's doing that thing. He says, total Calvin Ball, right? You guys are just doing whatever you want over there. Flaherty demands that Facebook step up its operations to remove bad information. So he sends another email. He's angry now. May 12th, Flaherty sends this in. All right, over there at facebook.com, he says, sure. All right, they're first connected to authoritative information, but then you, as of last night, were presenting an anti-vaccine account with less than 1,000 followers alongside at level with those pinned accounts. Why was your platform putting these posts up here where they were posted? He says, look, here's the thing. You know, and I know that the universe of undecided people searching Instagram for vaccines, as compared to, say, Google, is probably low. But removing bad information from search is one of the easy, low-bar things you guys can do to make people like me think you're taking action. And if you're not getting that right in italics, it raises even more questions about the higher bar stuff. You say in your note that you remove accounts that discourage vaccination from appearing in recommendations, even though you're using primarily to give yourself wiggle room. You also said that you don't promote those accounts in search. Not sure what else there is to say. YouTube, he says, for their warts, has done pretty well at promoting authoritative info in search results. It's true. Try to find our videos. They don't show up because only the authoritative searches show up from the news idiots at the local news, while keeping the bad stuff off of those surfaces. Pinterest doesn't even show you any results other than official information when you search for vaccines. I don't know why you guys can't figure this out. So condescending. If this were not a government official, right? Like if he didn't work for the White House, if he worked for any other business or any other company or any other person, you'd say this guy's the biggest a-hole in the bit, and you would never work with them again. I'd say, get the hell out of my office. Don't ever call me again. Don't ever contact our firm again. Don't ever even think about calling me or looking at me again. Don't even watch my show. Unsubscribe from my channel, psycho. Because of this condescension. It's not his company. He's acting like a little dictator because he wants to be. And he's probably got the full approval of the White House. Andrew Bailey says, I want to protect Missourians. Suppressing speech is insane. We're not going to allow that to happen on my watch. And we finally have part 3. Now we're going to learn more about part 3. In our efforts, writes Andrew, to protect the First Amendment, we deposed this fellow right here, Brian Scully, worked at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency called CISA. Key player in the federal government's information to suppress mis, dis, and malinformation. Let's listen to this fellow and learn more about him. He was on an interview over from this channel, which is a very interesting channel.
Welcome to the breakdown.
You can see this channel is, if we highlight it here, it tells us that we have 19.9 thousand subscribers. It is the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. This video got 221 views about 2 years ago. The explanation of this video is, amidst concerns of health disinformation in the current pandemic, scholars keep an eye on the 2020 election. In this episode, BK staff, Omu, interviews Brian Scully from CISA. Let's listen in to this very insightful conversation.
My name is Umu. I'm a staff fellow on the Berkman Klein Center's Assembly Disinformation Program.
Okay.
Our topic for discussion today is the upcoming November 2020 election.
Great.
The 2016 election in so many ways laid bare the connection between countering disinformation and protecting democratic processes.
Okay.
And I think that it's been difficult since the 2016 election to quantify the causal impact of disinformation on public conduct.
That's true, because there wasn't much causal impact of misinformation or disinformation on the election. It's just kind of something you guys invented so you could regain control of the narrative and censor all of their political opponents of the Democrats.
Confidence in democratic institutions. We know that foreign actors work to systematically influence the election, and we know that they're working to do the same this fall. My guest today is Brian Scully from the Department of Homeland Security, who will introduce himself.
Sure. Currently, I run the DHS Countering Foreign Influence Task Force, which is in the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And I've been doing that for about 2 years now.
Awesome.
Great.
Right. So talk a little bit about, a little bit more in depth about what you do at DHS on CISA.
Sure. So like I said, I lead a small team. We're focused on, we call countering foreign influence, but really what we're trying to do is build national resilience to foreign influence activities. And so for us, a lot of what we do is public education and public awareness, outreach to different communities, provide resources that folks can use to better understand both the risk and then ways to mitigate the risk. For us in particular.
So is that like a newsletter or something? Like to reach out to communities and provide information? It's like an email list or something? Like, is that what they do?
We're trying to reduce the amount that Americans engage with this information.
Oh, they're trying to reduce the amount that Americans engage. Oh, that sounds like they're trying to shut off the spigot of disinfo and misinfo. Well, where does that come from? Where does that so-called misinfo and disinfo, malinfo and whatever, where does it all come from? First of all, who quantifies it? Who gets to label it and articulate it as those things? But where does it come from? It comes from people. It comes from humans. humanity. We all speak it and it comes out of our mouths. So that means if you want us to engage with it less, that means you have to suppress people who are saying those things. And it's not only hurting them for having their speech censored and suppressed, it's also hurting the people who want that information. The people who say, I get educated by learning new things. It's hurting both sides. That's why we don't do it in this country unless you're this guy.
And so a lot of our products and information are focused on that. We're also working specific to the election. We work a lot with state and local election officials to help them with content around the security of the election, right? So helping citizens understand, how to vote, where to vote, how absentee ballot works, things like that.
Wow, what a stellar job. So this guy's like a volunteer senior citizen at a voting center. How to vote, where to vote. It's brilliant. And if you make a joke about voting on Wednesdays, then you're a terrorist criminal who needs to be executed. What a thrilling job for this guy. How to vote, where to vote. But it's got a cool acronym, though.
We do that in support of state and local election officials. And so our two main areas are really trying to help folks understand what's going on around the 2020 election, and then building broader kind of long-term resilience to disinformation amongst the American people.
All right, so it's actually an interesting interview because these two people are talking in circles. They're just both petrified of a reality that doesn't really exist. But that is Brian Scully. Now let's see what this final thread from the AG files has for us. He says, Brian Scully was deposed, and here's what we've got. CISA housed in the Department of Homeland Security, and created to ward off foreign cyber attacks, has now been weaponized to suppress domestic speech. As we just heard and just talked about, that's what they work on. This is the same group that launched the Disinformation Governance Board with singing Nina Jankowicz. And due to the immense public backlash, they formally disbanded that group. But its work continues. Jen Easterly, the head of CISA, believes that the infrastructure in CISA doesn't mean protecting roads and bridges. It means cognitive infrastructure. That means suppressing speech. The depositions focused on Scully, leader of the Mis, Dis, and Malinformation team, the gentleman we just heard from, started in 2018 as the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force to ward off foreign attacks. In 2021, CIFTIF changed its name, reflecting foreign threats to domestic speech. A couple of exhibits came out from yesterday's deposition here below. In this one, Twitter censored, or in their words, actioned, accounts for their civic integrity policies after CISA flagged them. Email came in from the government at cisa.dhs.gov. Please see the below reporting from Maryland. Thanks, redacted. Goes over to Twitter. Twitter responds at twitter.com. Thank you for raising this to our teams. We have actioned these accounts under our civic integrity policy. Thank you. We'll go ahead and nuke those accounts. In another email, we see CISA offering to help major social media companies connect with local election offices from Facebook to CISA, copying government 1, government 2, Facebook 1, government 3, government 4, government 5, Facebook 2, Facebook 3. Subject account security. Facebook says, hello, Team CISA. Hope you are all well. In our conversation a few weeks ago, you mentioned that your team could potentially help connect us with local election offices. Is this something you're willing to help us with? Additionally, we can provide training for them on account security best practices if you think that could be helpful too. Anything else we can do in the meantime, let us know. Facebook now wants to get ultra involved and intertwined with all of the election officials so that they can get rid of all the election misinformation that they don't like. And Bailey says, to defend the First Amendment, it's imperative that we stand against the federal government weaponizing its resources. Missouri will continue to lead the charge. He says this is just the tip of the iceberg. We look forward to releasing more documents as well as the highlights of the Scully deposition in the days to come. And of course, there will be a lot more of this, and we will continue to follow, of course, Attorney General Andrew Bailey as he drops and drips those out over the coming days. Thank you for joining us as we do. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video wherever it is you're watching this so that we can see you on the next one.